All right, welcome back, everybody. Another week. Uh, Ellen has decided that she was willing to step it up and do this again this week. I'm not quite sure if she's lost all reasonable sanity or not. Um, as you can see, Casper has decided to join Ellen. If you're watching this, there's Casper, and he has decided that he is going to partake.
Really perfect.
He is going to partake in today's episode. Hi, Casper. It's good to see you. I'm sure you'll have plenty to talk about. And if you're just listening to the audio version, you're really missing out on some great content right now because Casper has decided to join the show. Casper, do you want to introduce yourself? Um, I mean, plenty of people already know about Axel and Nitro and all of my four-legged friends over here. So, Casper, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell everybody where you're from, how old you are.
And just like that, he swats the camera.
Apparently, that is his form of communication. I am completely enthralled about the fact that he is literally staring at the camera right now.
They say that animals can't see 3D, and I believe that with a lot of them, but this cat loves to watch stuff on TV. He loves sprint cars. He loves fireworks on TV. He loves fishies. Oh, there he is swatting at you.
Yeah, and Casper for the longest time would not come around human beings like at all. Didn't want anything to do with anybody except for Ellen and Randy. Like if you went to their house, you were not going to see Casper. He was going to disappear. And now all of a sudden, I go with last time I was there, Casper like wanted to hang out the entire time I was there. It was a night and day difference from what I got to see last time. So Casper, welcome to the show. Ellen, welcome back. How is your I would ask you how your week is going, but I already know that based on all of the nationwide IT problems that started at the end of last week that have affected the airlines, I'm assuming it has dramatically affected your logistics
It was one
abilities.
really bad day. We've moved on past the IT issue. Um, the logistics, what I do is I ship things in the Pacific Northwest, Washington, Idaho, Oregon, and currently the state of Oregon is on fire. And, I had to learn this winter when there was snow on the pass and trucks couldn't cross the path with snow. And I remember even saying to Daniel, "Woo, we're home free. It's past snowy season." He's like, "Oh, but wait, there's more." And now we're in
Now,
fire season where there's
yeah,
130 miles of the interstate closed from Oregon to Washington. And that literally is probably 8 stops on my routes today.
and I'm assuming that there is no time frame. Obviously, wildfires are completely unpredictable, and I'm assuming that there's no time frame as far as when this area is going to be better for you guys.
No, it's jumped the interstate, or jumped the river, the lake, the lake. And I guess that's the point where they didn't want to happen. It's 0% contained right now. I don't know if you guys are friends with Erin Ellington on Facebook, Murder Nova's wife, but she had pictures yesterday driving. And I don't know where their next stop at NPK is. I know they're going from wherever they were in Canada to somewhere else. And they basically were told, gun it, go, don't turn around on the interstate they were on last night.
Nice. And since we're on this whole fire and snow and everything else, did you see the explosion at one of the basins at Yellowstone yesterday?
Yeah, that's a little weird.
It really, though, from what I read yesterday, um, it only seems weird because it doesn't happen all that often. Everybody thought that it was going to be a precursor for something else. If you know anything about Yellowstone, it essentially sits on top of a giant super volcano that would decimate most of the United States if it were to ever actually
Mm-hmm.
explode. And people were starting to get concerned, like, is this a precursor to something else? And everything that I read yesterday, it's not. All the subvolcanic activity, if you will, is all normal. There's nothing to indicate that that we should have anything to be worried about. So
weird though, just another weird thing in our United States weather geological wise.
I agree. A lot to talk about in drag racing. I think first and foremost, I did get a feedback, which was nice. I don't know if you've had anybody message you or reach out to you as far as topics. Well, hi Casper, as far as topics that they were interested in us discussing, but I did have one person comment wanting us to discuss safety. And I thought that this was a really good time because if anybody in the drag racing world has been paying any attention, obviously we had 4 or 5 weeks ago, John Force had that huge explosion that, you know, turned into crash.
Casper.
Yada,
like
yada, yada.
Like go to the camera, Casper. Thank you.
And I don't know if you saw the John Force update yesterday.
Yeah.
That he's being moved closer to home now for more rehab. But over the weekend, we kind of saw, I don't want to say the same thing, but it looked frighteningly close to what John went through, only this time it was Ron Capps, but this time it looked like the body separated in the way that the tether system is designed to have it separate. Now, I'm not going to grill you on, you know, if you can explain to us exactly, you know, word for word, detail for detail on how the tether system works, but you've been around NHRA long enough to remember pre-tether systems as a fan, probably. And then when did they start the dual tether system that they're using now? When did that come about?
It's actually very interesting. I worked for Tony Pedregon from 2012 to 2014. And if I'm not mistaken, it was either 12 or 13 that the Tethergate started. If I'm not mistaken, it was Ron Capps whose body flew off the car and injured a couple of fans, and I believe it was Charlotte. A little fuzzy on exact details with that. So they went to tethers, and I don't, you know, play that I know exactly how this whole system works, but it was designed to snap the body in half front to back, or the panels on the side blow out as if doors were opening up on the side. And then the double latch system. The tethers at one point were causing the body explosion to like explode in, so you were more or less getting the impact in the cockpit instead of the body dispersing and the explosion dispersing. I'm trying to explain this the best I can.
No. So what you're saying is, at first it was containing the force of the explosion within the body instead of dispersing it through the body, kind of splitting in half like it does now, or like it's supposed to do now. The Ron thing, luckily, I mean, I got a press release from Ron's team on Sunday night, and where he talks about the explosion and everything. And I'm wondering, from your point of view, one, do they need to keep doing more in regards to fine-tuning, if you will, the way that energy is dispersed when these vehicles have these big booming, you know, explosions?
I don't know what they need to do, but it needs to be looked at carefully. My fear since they started the tether and the double latch system was, now we're not going to injure fans, we're going to injure drivers. And I know that's not a choice that NHRA and or anybody made in this. Hey, we got to, you know, we'll sacrifice the driver not to have it go in the stands. I know that was never an intention, but I think it's worth looking into. I've watched Forces over and over and over, and in my opinion, the body explosion is not where I think he sustained the injuries. It's the side to side. I think he hit the wall 3 times. So that's my opinion. Again, I don't claim to know everything that's going on in these cars. I do know they're volatile, and for one not to explode every time it goes down the track is almost a miracle in itself. I think they need to look into the tether system again, to the tether body latch system. Not to spring off on this, but everybody is asking for them to investigate soft walls. I can't wrap my head around soft walls in drag racing. I think there couldn't be a worse idea on the planet, but again, we need to investigate it.
And
I don't know if you saw Mocan over the weekend. Somebody hit the guardrail, the guardrail track, flattened it and went over.
I didn't see that.
So, softer barriers. Are we going to contain the car, but have it bounce between the two of them with momentum? Or if the barriers have some sort of slope at the bottom, are we creating a ramp for a car to go zinging over? I don't know. I don't know that it's been studied at 330 miles an hour versus 200 in a NASCAR. But I just feel like this is a bad idea. So,
it's interesting that we talk about that, and not to get off on a whole tangent about, safer barriers, but if you look at like F1, for example, I don't know what they always use. I mean, I still see tires used as impact devices, and obviously we can't have tires as walls at a drag strip. But there's got to be, and I think one of the other issues is, how many races does NHRA have on the 2025 season? 20 of them scheduled?
I believe it's just 20. Yeah.
Okay, so you're looking, and how many different tracks? Pomona they go to twice. Charlotte, I think they go to twice. Do they go to Vegas twice? I mean, so realistically, we're talking 15 or 16 tracks that they only go to once. And the cost involved in doing these safer barriers would almost be like something, and because you've seen multiple sides of it, where are we just going to do it for a national event? And if we do, how do we bring these things in and incorporate them into just national events? Because you're not going to get most tracks investing in these type of things when they're designed to contain 330 mile an hour passes and not your 160 mile an hour top dragsters or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, they're not going to spend $500,000 or more and leave them in place for their test and tunes. So
no, and I just think it's many, many years down the road. And how do you test that? Do we start plowing cars into them, wrecking cars, testing it? I mean, that's going to be a interesting thing to test. I tracks think either at this point have guardrails, or they have what I call the highway jersey barriers that are just the concrete slabs, and then there are walls. So if you have a track with walls, you're not going to get the track to take the walls out, move them further over.
No.
And if you put these soft walls inside, now you've narrowed the racing surface. These jersey barriers, I mean, you're going to have to undo them, move them out. I mean, guardrails, you're not going to take down and move out. I just think that is perhaps a concept to look at. And maybe these are something we install at the very, very, very end of their concrete wall towards the shutdown area to see the impact of what it happens. I don't know, but I think it's far down the road.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we need to do everything that we can right now to continue to support drag racing and, at the local track level and everything else, to make sure these tracks stay open before we, go down the road of, you're going to have to spend an exponential amount of money. I mean, let's be real. We've got a lot of tracks that are still guardrail tracks, for that matter. So obviously they're not hosting a national event, but
Yeah.
I hate to say this, and you and I both know it, safety within our industry, honestly, whether it's and I think NASCAR and Indy and Formula One maybe not nearly as much because they've got boatloads of money. But for the most part, safety in the motorsports industry is a reactionary instead of a precautionary. I mean, we don't really do anything, especially in drag racing. I mean, let's be honest. We're not doing anything safety related in drag racing until something happens and we are kind of forced to. And it's not like an organization like F1 that has a lot of corporate money coming in that you can do the R&D on things and require these for teams. Like, that's just not happening, and that's going to lead me into my next topic. And this is going to be I've made my opinion very clear. You and I have ran into this issue before, and it pisses me off, honestly. And I'm not even going to mention the Facebook page because I stay away from it. I think it's bad for the sport. I know that everyone wants to have fun, and if anybody is going to sit here and say, well, you're soft, listen, we all know that ain't true. The issues that I won't even call them a media outlet because we both know that it's not a media outlet that kind of instigated this whole shit show. But these kids that are flipping off the photographers, and I don't know if it's the photographers or if it's just kids with cell phones, because every damn kid's got a cell phone now, but flipping you've got photos of kids out there holding a Wally in the winner's circle or whatever it may be, flipping the camera off. You want to know why? And I stated this in a response to, I think Jim Diaz had it posted. There's a time and a place for everything, and if you want to know why it is that we don't attract more corporate sponsorship, even though we are the most diverse sport in the world, the reason that we don't attract more sponsorship is because of bullshit like this. Like, there is a time and place, and you and I have dealt with this before, and I have made it abundantly clear. If you do that as a child in the winner's circle, I'm done with you. Like, I don't have time for that shit. I'm trying to present you in the most professional light after you busted your ass to win a race, and you're going to act a fool. And yes, it is me talking out of both sides of my mouth when it's fine for adults to do it. I still don't think it's fine for...
it is.
I don't think it's fine for adults to do it in the winner's circle. If we've already taken 5 winner circle photos and they want to be smart asses about it and they want to do a fun photo, will let them have their fun, but that photo is not going to be the one that sees the light of day. I've already gotten the commercial photos, if you will, that I need. But what are your thoughts? I mean, is this truly detrimental to the sport, or is this just kids being kids? Because I know when you and I were that age, if we flip somebody off, and given, I'm not going to let you guys all know that I flip people off all the time. All the photographers flip each other off. We all take photos of it. It is what it is. We're all grown ass adults. We're not in a winner's circle with a trophy presentation and everything like that, acting a fool though either. Is this detrimental to the sport? I mean, if we would have done that, we would have got our asses kicked.
I think it is very detrimental to the sport. And, if you equate it to, as an adult, are you going to hold your paycheck up for a picture and flip it off? So you're flipping off your employer. Or are you going to stand underneath the sign at work and flip it off and take a picture? No, because work is going to come down on you like terrible. Like, don't show us in that light. I just think it goes along with the whole, there's so much less respect in the world thing going on right now. It's a privilege to get to race, adult or child. It is. Because if you're a kid, you're not funding it. Most likely, your parents are, your grandparents, a sponsor. I just don't know how you look at them and say, yay, I won, F you. I don't. It makes me very angry. We had a situation one time in a victory photos with you taking them at a Midwest race. I won't mention names or cities or anything, but there also is a code of conduct in drag racing. We have a code of conduct with Summit. That doesn't mean you have to sit here like this and you have to, be like this. It just means be an adult, be a reasonable person.
Carry yourself in a manner.
And you're sponsored by Summit and you're flipping off the camera, I think that is so disrespectful to your parent person, your person who is helping you there, to your sponsors, to anything. I mean, you're out there, especially as a junior, and you're an example to people. Our older juniors that are about to age out in Midwest are such incredible examples and role models to even the adults.
Oh, I agree.
But how do you I just don't know how you say F you to your parent person that's there with you, to a sponsor. You wouldn't do it as an adult to a business. You wouldn't do it as an adult. I just don't think you would, unless you're completely self-funded and you're a millionaire. I don't think that you would do that, because your sponsor would be very unhappy.
Well, and let's face it. I mean, you and I, when we were growing up and we were that age, we didn't have to worry about social media though either. Yeah. So, and some of it, not all of it. You brought up an interesting point that, it's kind of disparaging to the parent in the situation too. The problem that I see is, and I don't see it much in Midwest, and obviously, I know most of the junior parents in Midwest. They're great for the most part. They're all great people. But I have seen in the past, if a kid is acting a fool, if you will, and then I see the parent, I hate to say it, and this isn't in the current, the current atmosphere, if you will, in Midwest, but the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, if you will, because a lot of the time what I've seen is the parents acting like 12-year-olds. Mm-hmm. And so you've got a bunch of other factors that go into this, but and I do agree that there's a code of conduct, and that includes racing at like these big junior finals, the ECF and the WCF. But what do you do? Like, people were like, well, this kid's license, NHRA license, should be taken away, and he should never be able to run. And I think all of those are ridiculous extremes. I think that my personal opinion is they need to be talked to about proper etiquette. And you're right. I have seen the older kids in juniors over in Midwest that are going to age out sooner than later, and they carry themselves, whether it was a Brody Zimmerman or McLean, Kesterson, the Clockers, they carry themselves for the, in a very professional manner and see the bigger picture. And I don't think that kids nowadays see a bigger picture. They are very short-sighted and short-termed as far as what they do, and not going, well, what is my drag racing career, if you will, going to look like 5 years from now, and are people going to respect me, and will I be able to get sponsors? Well, guess what? When you post shit online, that shit stays there forever, whether you delete it or not. Guess what? We can always find it.
I promise you, if you're a junior kid and you've taken a picture flipping off the Wally or the whatever in the picture and that you've posted on social media, when you least expect it 5 years down the road and you're trying to get a ride in a different car, or you're looking outside your family for resources, I promise you that picture is going to resurface. And if it's between you and, Bob Jones is going to get that sponsor because Bob Jones carried himself differently. And without branching off into some completely different subject, social media is the number one thing that sponsors look at way before they see if you're a talented driver or you're anything. They look at you on social media, and if every post is F this or GD or, you know, anything like that, I promise you, you will not be looked at for a sponsor. Adult and kid. Adult a little more forgiving, but not if every single thing on your wall is terrible.
And people are going to be like, well, what about Damon? I mean, Damon says whatever's on his mind, yada, yada, yada. And I've always said, I've also gotten to the point in my career, in my life, where I don't really censor myself. Now, if you notice, the podcast is much different than it has been in the past. It is much more, I don't want to say restrained, but I had a long conversation with a branding partner in the off season, and he's like, you can still, and I think, I think for adults, sometimes we're doing it to, it's not that we're trying to be somebody that we're not, but sometimes you also feel at some point that that's what people expect of you. And I think I fell down that trap for a few years where I'm not going to get anybody to pay attention to what I'm doing unless I am constantly angry and dropping the F-bomb and everything else. And I had a long talk with a branding partner, and he's like, you can still be you without doing that every other word. And I don't know if people have noticed this year on my personal social media, it has been probably a night and day difference. I am still the same person. I'm still going to vent about stuff. I'm still going to give my opinion. But I also realize that it was negatively affecting my business and the business of E3, because there were certain potential branding partners that are off put by that stuff. They're always going to support me. I'm always going to be who I am. I mean, I'm a fat middle-aged white guy that walks around with pink hair and pink Crocs. So there's something a little bit off about me to begin with. But I've scaled back on how derogatory, if you will, that I am on a regular basis. And I see this shit come up from these kids, and I'm like, I understand kids are going to be kids, and maybe kids are going to be kids is a lot different than it was when we were kids. I don't consider myself like some crotchety old guy that, you know, hates everything about Gen Z or whatever it is, because I think that there's a lot of good kids out there. I've met a lot of these good kids that are really focused. They're great in school. But then I look at this stuff and I'm like, it's not good. It's not a good look for how much traction that got. And then you see other tracks going, if we catch you doing this, because they got pushback from their own track sponsors, and track sponsors were threatening to pull money. That's where, when you start to negatively affect the business side of it, not only are you putting yourself in jeopardy with potential future sponsors, but now you're putting at jeopardy the monies that the track brings in to be able to do whether it's improvements, host events, or even payouts. Now you're putting that at risk. I mean, where do we give kids a slap on the wrist and say, don't do it again? Like, or is it more of an education? Do these kids need to be taught, listen, you can't do this stuff because it's negatively going to affect, and there's two sides of this. If you notice on social media over the weekend when this happened, because today is Wednesday, so maybe it was Monday, it was Sunday or Monday when everything just seemed to go into this downward spiral about this topic. You got two very, in honestly, you and I are kind of in the minority about this, that think that it's an extremely bad precedence to set to have kids doing this. And then you've got other people, well, you know, if you're offended by a finger, it's the whole Donald Trump syndrome. If you're offended by this, if you're offended by that, then maybe, you know, you're just woke or whatever. It's got nothing to do with me. I'm not offended when somebody flips me off.
It's not an offended thing.
No. it's
a
a
code of
common,
conduct.
yeah, it's a common sense thing too. A
If
time
you
and a
walk
place.
around your office, your workplace, your factory, and flip people off, it's probably going to get you, you do it a couple times, probably going to get you called into HR. The other thing that I think disturbed me so much, and I will not mention the names, you'll figure it out easily. The younger gentleman, junior gentleman, who was injured so badly in the off-track incident at the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yes.
His photo when he was leaving the hospital was everybody flipping off the camera. And this isn't against that fella. I know he had been through a very traumatic situation, but I don't know what that accomplishes. I don't know. Like, we prayed for you and we cared for you. You were like on a ventilator the first day. It's not scolding this person or the family, but
do you think, and let me ask your opinion about this then. Do you think, because when we were that age, and I go back to this, 30 plus years ago, when we were that age, if you flip somebody off, in any situation, it was pretty derogatory. I mean, it actually meant something then. Is it just that so much of this has become commonplace in society that it does not have the it doesn't hold the meaning behind it like it used to? Like, people aren't nearly as offended or whatever it may be. It's kind of like certain words have become much more prevalent in society. There are only a few words, really, at least in the United States. There's only a few words that you just don't use because you know that you shouldn't use them in a public situation. I mean, there's some that you shouldn't even use in a private situation. But is it just that we are so desensitized to everything that it's just okay to do these things, and that's where this is coming from?
I don't think even being desensitized makes it okay. Am I used to going on Facebook and seeing that stuff? Yeah, completely used to it. But does it make it okay or better? Not to me. And
Yeah.
I mean, I've told the story, this has nothing to do with this, but I've told the story that, I went out to eat with my parents. My parents were much older. They had me when they were 45. But I went out to eat with my parents, as a 6, 8-year-old, and maybe even younger. And I was eating food. It was a buffet, and I dropped a bunch of stuff on the ground. And my mom said to me, if you ever make a mess in a restaurant like that again, you will not eat out till you're 16.
Well, and
I believed that.
it comes back to that. If in these Gen Zers, and they go on TikTok and they go on Facebook or whatever, and they see all of the old people, because let's face it, Gen X, and there's not a Gen X or younger than the youngest Gen Xers turned 44 this year. I'm just saying. Yeah, 1980 was the cutoff. We're in 2024. The youngest Gen Xers are 44 this year. So, I mean, you and I are both approaching 50. You're going to get there quicker than I am. Just saying.
Yeah, I won't use the middle finger right now. Here would be a good time.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll use
but
all my fingers.
There were consequences to these things, and I mean, I don't think I used the F word in front of my mother until I was in my 20s. And now, and you and I have had talks about, sometimes how I talk even in public. And people think, well, they can think what they think. But you've also seen me be able to sit down like as if I'm in a Fortune 500 boardroom. So, but yeah, there were consequences for doing those things. Like the whole "I'll give you something to cry about" was not a joke. Like, we grew up in a different time, and I think that some of these younger kids just think, well, they're just old and they don't get it. Well, it's not. It's just that we knew what the consequences were, and we knew what it actually meant to do these things. And I don't think some of it comes back to the fact that they're so used to spouting off whatever they want to spout off behind a keyboard, and there's no repercussions, because if you wanted to flip somebody off or you had a problem with somebody when we were that age, you had to go to their house or you had to do it at school or the playground or whatever it was. And there was not, listen, if you got into a fight, I went to a Catholic school. If you got into a fight at the Catholic, you were going to get your hand slapped and go to class. There wasn't any of this, we're going to call the police, yada, yada, yada. Like, I remember I skipped school one day and the principal literally drove to my house.
Yeah.
And I was in like seventh or eighth grade.
Yeah,
they
like
drove,
Ferris Bueller was real.
yeah. They drove to my house and wanted to know why I had left school at lunchtime and was not coming back for the rest of the day. It's not like that nowadays. Things have changed. I'm not going to say they're for better or for
be at the school.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it's for better or for worse. And this isn't like some long tangent about how to raise your kids or anything. This is solely based on what is best for the industry as a whole, and I think that it makes, as much as we complain about how corporate NHRA, NASCAR, Indy, how corporate everything and robotic almost that it's become, we grew a fan base in drag racing from the pushing, the shoving, the smack talking, but we didn't get to the corporate level. And look at NASCAR and the amount of money in NASCAR now, and the amount of you've got owners like Michael Jordan. You've got crossover appeal. You're not going to get that type of business partnerships within drag racing. And I think Tony Stewart would be somebody who could speak on this very well, because he's been in so many different forms, whether it's Indy, NASCAR, now drag racing, dirt track racing, how we bring in the corporate side of things to increase the viability, increase the visibility within our sport. Tony would be a perfect one to speak to on that, because he's been across all of these different spectrums. But kids,
and he's had the same sponsors, some of the sponsors, Mobile One, things like that, for 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, they don't stay that way. Cruise has had Snap-on, I think, for 15 years now. I mean,
yeah,
they could go somewhere else.
Look at how long Castrol and Ford were with John. And
listening, I just have to type something quick.
No, you're good. And I mean, Napa's been with Caps what seems like forever, or Matco,
one of the longest in the industry.
Matco and Antron, and so you've got all of these longtime sponsors. But guess what? You don't see Ron Capps or John Force or Antron Brown flipping off the camera while they're holding a Wally. Because you know what? Immediately they would probably get a phone call from their sponsors going, yeah, you're not going to do that again.
And you never know when your last win is going to be. I mean, it for health reasons or sponsor reasons or choosing to be out of racing. You never know when that's the last one you're going to hold, whether it's a Wally or any organization. Have just a little bit of respect.
So as somebody who runs a racing organization, what do you see? What kind of, obviously we have a code of conduct. I think there's a code of conduct in every organization that I've ever been around, whether it's Midwest, PDRA, NHRA, NMCA, NMRA. I'm sure even Northeast Outlaw Pro Mods, some of these others have some kind of code of conduct. I'm willing to bet that even, what do they call it? No Prep Elite, which used to be No Prep Kings or whatever. I bet you they've even got some kind of code of conduct, especially when they were with Discovery.
And a morality clause. I don't know if theirs is called code of conduct or morality, but it's been a few years since I've seen one of the contracts, but very much is. And you think, oh, those guys can do whatever they want. Well, there are still some no-nos.
So what do you see? I mean, again, as somebody who runs an organization, two questions then. What do we need to do to curtail this behavior, and what do you think are realistic? I don't want to use the word punishments, but that's essentially what we're saying. What needs to be done when this happens?
Well, I know of a direct situation where this happened at a track several years ago, 5, 6, 8 years ago, and NHRA was notified, and the track chose to not have the individual back for some period of time. And I don't want to go into the specifics or anything like that. And I'm not going to tell you that I'm going to ban you from Midwest or something of that nature, but there is going to be a situational talk about it. You know, the photo will never get published in any relation to the event, won't be published, and I wouldn't address it publicly, because you address it publicly, the photo is going to get posted and people win. You know, proactively at the next drivers meeting, at our next event, and probably through the rest of the year, I'm going to just say, adult, junior, parent, grandparent, neighbor, you know, you don't have to do much, but you need to be respectful of the fact that you are racing in an organization that has a corporate sponsor, many, many, many sponsors. And just, you know, don't think you'd flip off grandma on the Christmas card. So please don't flip me off with your trophy, you know?
Well, and I know that we have, I'm not going to say had issues before in the Midwest, because we really haven't had a whole lot of issues. I know because I am pretty close with all of the drivers and then all of the parents of the juniors, that when there has been an issue with juniors, whether it's kind of inappropriate language, whether it's a feeling of bullying, if you will, that I've had golf cart conversations, if you will, and anybody in drag racing knows what golf cart conversations are. I've had golf cart conversations with kids and parents about how we need to proceed and how things need to be handled, and how the kids need to kind of hold up their end of the bargain, if you will, when it comes to this. And you and I both know that there are some junior parents out there that if their kid does something, runs a foul like this, listen, we've seen junior parents park their kids for a lot less than this. And so I'm not saying that kids can't have fun, and there's a time and a place for everything. And the winner's circle in a very public forum like that, because ECF is not a small deal. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of juniors, and
it was like a 10-day event, if I'm not mistaken. It was weekend to weekend.
Yeah, it is.
Jimmy Owen posted a photo like day 142 when he was prepping the track in the rain at the end of it.
Yeah, it's a very long deal, because they have multiple events, multiple races during the event. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to go. I would actually go, because Bristol's only 3 hours from the house, but I'm not going to go and see juniors when it's literally 97 degrees out.
The juniors didn't even want to see juniors, I think.
Yeah, I just can't do it. I just think at some point that we need to address it in a not a you can never do this, you can't have fun, because drag racing is supposed to be fun.
100%, yeah.
You just need to carry yourself in a manner that is not detrimental to yourself, not detrimental to the event, the track, or the sponsors. Because
Scott Palmer has said since I have known him, not going to be censored. I do what I do. You like it or you don't like it. But he's not standing out there flipping somebody off.
Well,
I mean, what's the worst thing he does? He listens to music with a couple of swear words, or he has a beer. I mean, it's the way you carry yourself. I think one day we could talk about sponsorship too, and I would love to lead into how, like I said, with social media and how important it is.
Absolutely.
Someday.
And I think that we probably could do that sooner than later, because we are coming up on a time frame where if you're going to submit sponsor proposals for the 2025 season, it needs to be done sooner than later. So I think
It needs to
that's,
be done end of third quarter,
yeah,
and that's the end of August.
yeah, I think that that's something that we can certainly address.
Mhm.
And with that same notion, we can address the sponsor aspect of it, and
Mhm.
from multiple angles, including the social media and how to present yourself on social media. Now, I will say, these kids also grew up and are growing up in a time where they're inundated with news and they're inundated with music and everything. A lot of the music that these kids listen to would never ever have even thought about being played on the radio 20 years ago, much less 30 or 35 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, uh, I remember when Two Live Crew had to fight pretty much all the way to the Supreme Court
They had a
for
fight for their right to party. Oh wait,
uh,
that was not
that
them.
was the Beastie Boys, dear.
Oh,
But no, Two Live Crew, freedom of speech over their entire As Nasty as They Want to Be album. And if you look at that versus some of the music that comes out nowadays, it's like the Two Live Crew is almost, PG compared to what is out nowadays. So I think it is a different time. I don't want to see this become a regular thing, if you will. I don't want it to be something where one kid does it and then every kid thinks that they should be doing it.
yeah.
Because that's not a precedent that we want to set. And I think organizers, promoters, whoever it may be, need to kind of nip it in the bud, if you will, right off the rip, so that we don't see this happening on a regular basis. Because I don't think that it's I think it's fine to have fun. I just don't think it's okay to do that in a public forum where it's going to be detrimental. Listen, when I drop the F-bomb or something like that, you know who it affects? It affects me. I'm not affecting an entire industry, whereas this has caught on like wildfire. It was legitimately all over my social media for 2 days. And yeah, that's an issue. So I think it will resolve itself as long as we approach it in the right way.
We also don't need to be afraid to say this isn't okay with us. So that's the end of what I have to say on this.
I agree. Yeah, it's don't if there's an issue, don't be afraid to voice the issue. So we talked about some safety. The next thing that I want to get into, and we're gonna make a big right-hand turn here. I want to talk to you, and we haven't publicly been able to talk about this, or haven't really addressed it nearly as much as we should. In September, at the brand new Flying H race, or the Flying H racetrack in Odessa, Missouri, isn't it? Is it? Yeah. Is Kansas City a state, or is it just a city? Or I'm confused. That's an inside joke. Don't worry. You guys, Midwest is hosting the richest pro mod race in drag racing history. I don't know what the payouts are at this point. I have lost track.
Yeah.
But it started. This whole thing started at like, pro mods are going to get paid $150,000 to win the A race. And is that going to be a 32 or 16 car field?
Please don't make me think that.
Okay.
No,
I was just curious.
Let me take my logistics and open my Smackdown flag here.
I didn't remember if it was going to be a 16 or a 32 car field. And while she looks at that, so she's like, nah, it's something like that.
Something like that.
We're talking like the weekend of the 19th to the 22nd in September.
Yes.
At Flying H.
Or the week of the 16th, however you look at it.
Well, and now in not to go sideways on this, I've got a lot of people asking me if I'm going to War in the Woods, which is Friday and Saturday at Brown County Dragway in Indiana. And I'm like, I don't know, because I have to be at Flying H on Sunday to help start setting all of that up. So we shall, I mean, it's only an extra 48 hours, but you know, it's then and I'm going to be at Flying H until the following Sunday or Monday. So $150,000 to win though.
Yep. 208,000 is the whole purse for the event for Pro Mod for the event.
Yeah. And you guys are going to have
32 car field, by the way.
Okay, 32 car field, and then there's a B for those who don't qualify or whatever. Isn't that paying out like 25,000 or something ridiculous?
The winner of the B field is 25,000 with 10 grand as a runner up and 2,500 semis. And here's what I think the beautiful thing is about this. There are a lot of people that know they don't have the biggest shot in the world at the 32 car field purse. But going home with 25 or 10 or even $2,500 in the slammers, the B race, is great.
Now let me ask you. So the entry for this, if you're not a Midwest driver who races the first 4 out of 4 races, the entry is what, 2,500?
For Pro Mod, yes.
Okay, so let's think about this a second. 2,500 to enter this race. And I don't need to get into all the what does that include, driver, crew, yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking $2,500 entry. And if you go to the semis in the B field, if you will, you're already going to get your money back.
Mm-hmm.
Just by going to the semis in the B field.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go to the finals, because what was the payout in the finals of the A? It was 150 to win, and how much was runner up?
25,000.
Okay, so 20, and it's 25,000 to win the B field. So that's a 10 times your entry to win the B field. And I know I'm not, the added cost of traveling or yada, yada, yada. But you're talking about 25 grand to win the B field and $150,000 on a $2,500 entry to win the richest payout in Pro Mod history. I don't like. This is going to be awesome. And I know that there's some surprise entries that we will talk about a month from now, a month and a half from now, because we're running up on we have less than 2 months.
Yes.
I know I shouldn't have said that, because now Ellen's freaking out about it, because you guys have no idea how much logistical stuff goes into putting on an event like this. I do.
This race is as much work as the other 7 are during the year. It's like having 2 seasons in one.
Absolutely.
Because the logistics about even just hotels and travel and transportation, and before we even get to the point where we're at the track, is just tremendous.
And the extra, the thing that a lot of people don't realize is Ellen and I legitimately talk about this race and have talked about this race almost every single day.
It's my 5-page to-do list.
Yeah. Almost every single day since this race was announced. Her and I, and typically Randy, have had conversations surrounding this race. And as of late, we've gotten to the point of, okay, what do we need at that race? And you guys know, I am still a impartial third party, but I am also the series photographer. This is a Midwest non-points, correct me if I'm wrong, non-points Midwest race, correct?
It is non-points for juniors, top, and Pro Mod. Fun and Car and 420, it will still be points, because this is basically a standalone race for them with some increased purse money.
Okay.
And they both run shorter seasons.
Yeah.
So the reason we chose for it to be non-points is because we know in those 5 classes that I just mentioned that there will be a lot of entries from across the country. They still have to fit our rules, of course, but that, the East Coasters, they inherently run faster than we do, so we don't want them to ruin your chances at a championship. And this was a point of contention for a long time. We talked about it. We went to the racers and we asked them. So what they're going to get is 50 points for teching in, basically, teching in, show up points, if you will, if you attend. And no points for qualifying or eliminations, because it's, because it's a 5-round race for Pro Mod. I mean, 120 points somebody could gain on that doesn't run in our season and take away from someone else could derail an entire season. And we don't want you to feel like,
I agree,
it doesn't matter.
And I have, my personal opinion is I have absolutely no objection to this. And I know that there have been, listen, Flying H has gone through some growth issues. They're taking the steps that they need. I saw the timing system photo that somebody, I don't know if it was you or somebody else had, or maybe it was even Flying H, that they had, figured out what the problem was. But I also want people to understand with this race, I am really looking forward to this race. I'm also really looking forward to this race. Listen, I'm not going to dog on anybody else's races, but I really love the fact that this is not an invitational race. This has been presented as, and continues to be, pay your entry and you're going to get a shot at the money. This is not a popularity contest. This is open to whoever wants to, as long as you fit in the rules, whoever wants to come in. With that said, Ellen and I talked last week, and this is, I'm not going to say this is something that has concerned us from the beginning, but we've been aware of, because she will ask for my feedback and I will give her feedback. Again, I don't have any final say in anything that happens in Midwest. So any of you people need to get that out of your mind. Speak of that, I do need to ask quickly before I forget. Did Daryl Jackson get a hold of you about media credentials? Because he said that he was coming.
Although I've not looked through my messages from overnight. So if he sent something late last night, perhaps.
No, I don't know who he talked to, but Daryl is one of the regulars over at PDRA, and does a lot of that PDRA stuff. So I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe he was coming with a team, but I'll reach out to him, or we'll talk about that offline. I don't have any, if you will, final say in anything that happens in Midwest. So I don't want people to think that, but I definitely give my input so that, you kind of, have an ear and a voice to bounce stuff off of as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the big thing that we've discussed lately is the need for, because listen, you're going to have a ton of pro mods, a ton of top sportsmen, top dragsters, probably a ton of juniors, because the payout for juniors, I think, is ridiculous. I want to, it was like, what was it, like $2,500 or something? I don't know. I don't want to speak out of line, but I know that the junior payout was just ridiculous. I thought it was like $2,500 or something like that. I could be wrong, but it wouldn't be.
I have so many numbers in my head I can't quote without looking. Carry on amongst yourselves. I'll figure it out here in a second.
But yeah, I mean, there's going to be so many cars on the property. And so the big concern was, we need to put together a list of what we need staffing wise.
2,000 to win.
2,000 to win. Okay.
500 to win in their undercard.
That's a big payday for juniors. And so I made an entire Excel spreadsheet about, the needs, the staffing needs and things like that, for this event. Bringing in a lot more people than we would normally have at any of our Midwest races,
Mm-hmm.
so that things run as smoothly as possible. Because, I mean, realistically, this is probably going to be the biggest event that Flying H has this year. And I think that this event, just from a production side of things with the live feed and with the amount of photographers that don't normally come into a Midwest race but are going to come to this race, because this is going to be a precedent-setting race with a ridiculous amount of money on the line. And when I say ridiculous, it's 150 grand. I mean, how much does it pay to win NHRA Pro Mod now? Isn't it 25,000 a weekend, something like that?
20 or 25, yeah.
Okay, so essentially,
but we're talking exponentially more money to run because of the amount of days you have to be gone, and because you're running quarter mile in your parts.
Just the payout, and this isn't to take away from NHRA or any other organization, but we're talking about $150,000. I mean, yeah. I could pay off my house and still have money left over to go on a very nice vacation for $150,000. And I think you're going to see some of the heaviest hitters in all of Pro Mod racing be there. I think that
it is quite a diverse group, I'll tell you that.
I think that the rule set, listen, Midwest has made a huge effort because they run all of their combinations together in one class. Nothing is split up, which is the way that I think everything should be run together. If you're gonna try to figure out who the baddest of the bad is, everything should be run together. And they've proven with their rule sets, and now there was a mid-season rule change, which I don't know why anybody is surprised about. Every organization does mid-season rule changes for parity purposes, so I don't know why anybody would be surprised about that.
But they are.
Whatever. I've seen it in NMRA and NMCA for damn near 25 years or whatever, however long it's been. NHRA doesn't even do mid-season rule changes. They do per race rule changes. I've seen them do rule changes at a race before, for parity purposes. So they've proven, I've seen turbo cars win the championship. I've seen nitrous cars win the championship, and I've seen blower cars win the championship. All playing under that set of rules. So I think that the rule set's going to be good. I think that we are going to see a whole lot of cars in the 60s. Like, who would have thought even a few years ago that we were... I'm willing to bet that at least I'll go out on, and this isn't even going out very far on a limb, I'm willing to bet the top 16 qualifiers at that race, and I'm saying at least the top 16. It may be exponentially more than that. The top 16 will all be in the 60s.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And I mean, that track and that facility, that track surface is amazing. We've already seen that. Nice and long. It's odd the way that some of it's laid out to get to the lanes and everything, but again.
And the parking will be different. They've paved the second tier and third tier since we were there. So.
And that's why people are like, well, what does it take to run a race?
Yeah.
Well, Midwest starts testing on Tuesday, I believe.
Yes, there's going to be testing Tuesday, Wednesday, and part of Thursday. 2 rounds of qualifying Thursday, 2 rounds of qualifying Friday, first round of eliminations Friday night.
So, people want to know what it takes to put on a race like this. And there are only a few people, honestly, in the country that could answer this question. You, Wes Buck, who obviously puts on his big race in Florida. Victor, who does, snowbirds and U.S. Street Nationals. Donald, on the radial side, Donald Long, and Monty, with Yellow Bullet, who also uses a kind of a combination of rules mishmashed from, I think, mostly PDRA or Northeast Outlaw, where, they're running all the combinations together. So we're talking about a handful of people really that are putting on a heads-up event of this magnitude. You could include Jason Miller on the import
Mike
side
Hill,
of it.
Tyler,
Yeah.
Raleigh.
There's not a whole lot of you out there that understand what it takes to do this. And I mean, I've been around long enough, and I've worked with every single one of these promoters that we've just listed in some way, shape, or form. But dealing firsthand with Ellen on this Smackdown race in September. This is a daily thing that will consume your life, especially when it's the first time, because you are trying to make sure that, listen, nothing is ever going to be flawless.
Yeah.
We always talk about flawless runs and flawless this, and you're never going to have complete flawlessness, because you're always going to look back and go, well, we could have done that a little bit differently. I'm looking at this and I'm watching and talking to Ellen about what she's got to go through with this. And the amount of work this entire year, we're already July 24th. This entire year has been consumed by Smackdown.
Yeah.
And when I say consumed, we're not having, has Casper rejoined the chat?
Casper is rejoining the chat. Hi.
We have not, I don't know that there is a day that goes by where we are either not messaging or in some way chatting about Smackdown. And we are now about to enter the 8th month of 2024. And almost every day there comes a conversation about Smackdown. Like, what needs
the other series out there. One thing I realized the other day when I wasn't sleeping was, if you have a series, you're not putting on a giant capital race. Like Wes puts on the World Series promo, but he's not putting on a series. Tyler, Raleigh, Northeast put on a series, but they're not putting on a big one. And it's interesting. And we are a tiny staff. Tiny
that
staff.
That
but
would
we have a cat.
That would be that tiny staff would kind of be an understatement. I do think that out of all the heads up series in drag racing right now, that the Midwest staff is by far the smallest staff that there is as far as the organization goes in all of drag racing. So I don't want to say stretch the staff thin, but there's a lot of work to be done, and it will get done. I mean, I know that some of the production crew is already going to be there that Sunday. You and I are both going to be there that Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Start testing on Tuesday. I think we start. Do we start parking on Sunday? Do we start parking on Monday? I don't know.
Yes.
Somewhere in that. So, are you at this point? Are you looking forward to hosting the richest pro mod race in history? Or are you excited or looking? I know that you've still got the Michigan race before. The Michigan race almost runs itself. I mean, there's such a great staff. The Michigan race is
the easiest race. The Petersons. I mean, that race. Yeah. We don't have weeks and weeks and weeks and talks leading up to it, because it just goes so well, and they're amazing people.
If you want to talk about a race that pretty much is damn near as close to flawless as it can be.
It is.
Samuel, his dad, his mom, his wife, that entire family up
Yeah.
there at 131. That
So we
race
try not
runs
to break
about as
any bones this year.
yeah. If you could not be running down the side of the track in the grass and break anything 2 weeks before Smackdown, that would be great. But at what point do you think that you're going to be able to? Are you going to have to wait until we get all the way through the Smackdown race before you can enjoy any part of it? Or are you like kind of giddy? I mean, you and I have gone to races where we're giddy about going. Lights Out 7, Gator Nationals, the first time that we were credentialed media at Gator Nationals, World Cup, because that crowd there was ridiculous. Yellow Bullet. You know, there are races where you get giddy about it. Almost like a child again, like on Christmas morning. Are you starting to get giddy about SmackDown, or is it such a stressful thing for you that you don't get to really sit back and enjoy it yet?
I'm definitely not enjoying it yet. I'm very excited about the concept and about the race, but there's just so much. And the fact that we've only completed 3 races this year and we have 4 left, and they're a week off or a week between each one is all we have, is scary to me, because it's almost like we have Martin, we have Smackdown, and then we have a double, but it's not. We have Pine Valley and Tulsa. And that's a lot, and it's a lot to ask of our racers. It's, we come home from Martin, Michigan. I'll fly home Sunday, and I'm not even home a week and have to go to Smackdown. So it is a lot. It's a lot, but I'm excited about it. I've told you the story many times. I used to do catering, and to do a high profile event, I used to love doing it, but the adrenaline was getting everything ready and getting prepared for it, that when the event started, I was like, okay, I'm done, because the challenge and the work was over. So I really hope to get to sit back and see, not sit back, but to enjoy the actual race. I think it's going to be unique. Is it going to be perfect? No, it's not going to be perfect, but we care, and we are a bunch of people that will give it our best and do our best.
Now, let me ask you, because you and I traveled so much and went to so many different races, and I could always see the overwhelming excitement anytime that we were going to a race, for the most part, the excitement leading up to the race for you to go. As somebody who's organizing these races and putting on these races as part of Midwest, at what point on a race week are you excited about, or enjoying the event in which you've helped put on? Like let's just take, for instance, and I'm not going to use Tulsa because that's your home track. It's 25 minutes from the house. I'm not talking about that. Let's take Michigan, which is by far the farthest drive, or farthest travel, if you will, for you. Hi, Casper. At what point do you start to get giddy or enjoy that part of it, as a fan, a lifelong fan of drag racing? When do you start to enjoy that and kind of set the business of it aside, even for 5 minutes, and go, this is cool?
Opening ceremony, usually right before E1. That's just a time where I want everyone that has worked on that event to be on the starting line together and stand there, and you take 4 minutes, the national anthem and the prayer, and you just absorb what you have and you enjoy it. Casper, whoa, buddy.
You're good.
Children. It's very hard to talk when you have a tail in your face.
Oh, if you guys are only listening to the audio of this, you are seriously missing out on some great video footage.
Oh, okay. Where were you? I love the eliminations because I feel like at that point we've made it. We're going to crown champions. We're going to crown people who've never won a race. We're going to see families together in victory lane that have never gotten to do this before. And I love that part.
And then what is your process after the, I mean, unfortunately with Smackdown, it's hard not to laugh when I've got a cat staring at me.
And he hears your voice and he tips his head, and it's even cuter.
So unfortunately with Smackdown, it's not like you have a bunch of time where you can sit back and enjoy what has happened, because then you've only got a few weeks before Pine Valley. But typically after a race, like we just had the St. Louis race, what seems like 2 months ago, but it wasn't that long ago. At what point do you get to decompress after having an event? And being, you know, the face and the point person and everything of the event, and having to deal with everything that could or might go wrong and things like that. Like, when is your decompression point? Like, okay, this is over. I'm glad how it went. Yada, yada, yada.
Drive home.
The drive
home is my decompress, debrief, write everything down, good or bad. We ask, Daniel and I ask the production staff to spend at least an hour watching the broadcast the next week, fast forward through chunks of it and look at it, and give us your feedback, good and bad. And that has proven to be more helpful than any part of anything that we've done. I always look at the good and bad. I don't see the bad as much anymore, because I realized a couple of years ago that the bad I see, 95% of it isn't public. So it's just a matter of fine tuning things. Taking on this production in-house has been it's been a real thing. Like it has, I have a tail in my face. It has taken on, a life of its own, and it's added an entire element of work to this. Now, Daniel does the majority of it, anchoring it, works with everybody around, Michael and Ryan and Noel and Richard and, Luke and Ronnie and whoever else is involved on a weekly basis. But it is a tremendous amount of stuff. And Flo does a debriefing with us. What was good, what was bad, your subscribers, your minutes watched. And I have learned to I don't compare it to PDRA, or I just don't, because it's not the same. We're not on the same field. You do the best you can and you move on. Keith spent a tremendous amount of money on production equipment. We had all new microphones and stuff for Flying H, which we thought would be the best thing ever. And while they were pretty good, they were better than the bit of sound system they had installed in the tower at that point. And that gave us more issues. So it's just tiny little bits. And I have to not get involved in the production as much, because I have all the other facets of it. And, you and Daniel have worked great together and have learned a lot. And it's been very helpful.
What is, and I think the answer is going to be a little bit different when you're done with Smackdown. But what is the most gratifying thing once the event is completed and you sit back and look at it? What's the most gratifying, fulfilling thing to you after a race? Like, you sit back and look at it, and what really, what makes you happy?
It's seeing somebody win for the first time, or win after, an incident, or win after 10 years or something. Or personal bests are my absolute favorite. Like, you don't have to win a round, but man, we have people in our series that have run almost from the beginning. The Sandmans, LeBate, Giuliano, Brian Lewis, those guys who aren't going to be the one to put up a number one most of the time. But when they go out there and they have a personal best and everybody is excited on the starting line, you know, how many times have you stood there and watched Sandman with his one-man crew, Don Tackett, and they go blazing down the track and they set a personal best? They didn't win the round. They certainly didn't win the race. But man, everybody was excited because they knew what it meant for those people. You know, it's amazing.
Then you'll see Sandman walking around with a huge smile on his face because he is just one of the best human beings that I think I've ever met in the world, much less drag racing. He's just a wonderful.
Giuliano has spent so much time testing this year and perfecting his combo with Rare Morrison, and it's just great to see the improvements that he's made. Costa just came out with a brand new car and, you know, immediately was great. And it's so cool to see that. You know, we see it in top and top also in juniors. And, you know, Dave Pierce has built up the 420 class. And I knew last night Dave Pierce was sending out messages to the 420 guys because they were registering for Smackdown. So, you know, Steve Macklin has pioneered the funny car class. He helps with everything. He'll rally the troops. He'll get them together. You know, it's just, it's great. And I love a first-time winner and a personal best.
I mean, I think what I really enjoyed, especially this season, seeing Tony Strachan out there, you know, working through the struggles and getting through them, and him and his wife Melanie have, you know, I love seeing them do well and work through it and get through it. And then Ed Thornton, and unfortunately I was not trackside when this happened. I think it was over in the winner's circle. But when I think it was Ed and Mark Mickey in St. Louis, and I was in the pits, or I was doing something with winner's circle photos, and those two ripped off side-by-side monster runs. And I know that Ed has struggled with getting the car to go A to B clean. And Ed has always been known to put up huge mile an hour. But for them to make, even though they lost, correct me if I'm wrong, they lost a mark in legitimately a side-by-side huge numbers race, but for them to get down the track straight, clean, put up a huge number, to me I know you talk about loving to see a first time winner or personal bests. For me, it is seeing the overcoming of adversity, like a Strachan, like a Giuliano, like a Ed Thornton, who have struggled with maybe the setup or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden they just, you know, everything clicks, and it's almost like a Sunday stroll for them straight down the track at giant mile an hour, low ET, stuff like that.
And how about the Colorado racers? We have several Colorado top dragsters and juniors. Colorado is not that close.
No.
Like they lost Vandermeer, they lost Great Bend in Kansas, you know, and they're choosing to spend at least half of their season with us running. I mean, that's incredible. It's such a long drive. And we know that one junior family that was their first race with us the day that Ronnie passed away, Ronnie Hobbs.
Yep.
And we had a chapel service the next morning before anybody went home, and that junior family went out and bought flowers and put them on the doorstep of Mara's trailer.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just, it's things like that. You just, there's memories created. When you look at the Whiteleys and they've got 8 cars entered, and their daughter, their son-in-law, or their son, their daughter-in-law, the junior kids, you know, you can't make that stuff any better.
No, when you've got, and listen, the Whiteley camp, that's like an entire compound over there, which, I mean, again, I harp on how great some of these people are, but that camp is just, full of amazing people. And you've got 3 generations of racers running out of that camp, because if you look at Jim and Annie, and then you've got Steven and Delana, and then you've got the kids, like, I mean, it's awesome. That's what drag racing should be about, is passing these things down to the next generation, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't see that. I mean, over in PDRA, you've got the Franklins, and then you've got Amber Franklin, and their kids do great things. So you've got 2 generations over there. And I'm hoping that, 20 years from now we can look back, or 15 years from now, however long it is, and hopefully you'll have 3 generations of Franklins racing in PDRA. I think that would be great. But yeah, it's so satisfying to see. In the West Coast, unfortunately, you and I have talked about this, the West Coast doesn't really have a lot of places for people to race anymore. So, if they've got Midwest, and it's actually funny. I had Raul on last night. He hopped into the live Q&A that I did on Tuesday night. And he says, "What do I need to do to get Midwest to come down to SGMP for a winter race or an off-season, like, winter warm-up type of thing?" And I said, one, that's an Ellen question. That is not a Damon question. I got nothing to do with that. It's way above my pay grade for anything. But I also said, here's the problem. SGMP is so far away from Tulsa, and Tulsa is essentially where everything is headquartered. I don't know how long I would assume SGMP is a solid 16 hours from Tulsa. So I said, the problem is a lot of the Midwest racers are Oklahoma, Texas, that kind of area. Yeah. So to do something at SGMP when we don't have that much, I mean, drag racing, you and I joke about this all the time. There is no off season in drag racing anymore. There is, I grew up in the Midwest. Your off season pretty much starts at Halloween, if you're lucky, and then doesn't start again until the end of March, beginning of April. Living where I live now, and doing the events that I do, I mean, I've already put out my schedule for the rest of this year. I've got stuff already leading into what takes me to the end of February of 2025.
Yeah.
With realistically, almost no weekends off, if you include Christmas and New Year's and whatever. And then the banquet, and then U.S. Street Nationals, and then, it's Sick Week, U.S. Street Nationals, Lights Out. I mean, I'm already at the end of February at that point. So adding even more when these racers need time to refresh their stuff, research, things like that.
And these guys are small business owners too, more so than most of the organizations. I mean, they can't take a week for a race generally for U.S. Street Nationals like others do. Some of the Pro Mod guys do, and occasionally a top and top here or there, but for the most part, these guys aren't able to take a whole week off to go do something. And that's why we were very clear on the Smackdown time frame early on, so that everybody knew what to expect. We don't race on Sundays, but that race, we told you to leave Sunday open. Hate it, but
just in case.
Got to finish it. We start qualifying Thursday night. You still have 2 qualifying sessions on Friday if you can't make it Thursday. Anyway.
Let me ask you quickly, because obviously we're running up on an hour and a half, and I don't want to keep you all day, because we could talk about stuff all day. That's why we're going to try to keep doing this weekly as long as our schedules allow for it. I talked about this last night on the Q&A, I think it was, or it was the night before that I did a Q&A. What is one of your favorite sites in drag racing? Now, I don't think that you were on the live last night when I talked about what there's a class at a race that I so look forward to. But what is one thing like that sticks out to you? It doesn't even have to be on track, but something that you're like, this is awesome, and you see it kind of, maybe there's a specific race that it happens at, or what's one thing that really sticks out to you that it kind of like warms your heart and you get the kind of butterflies?
Oh, I was going to say the barbecue at St. Louis. It didn't warm my heart. I just thought it was looking outside the box.
That was different.
I actually thought it was not the most intelligent thing leading up to it, and then was like, oh, people are here for that.
Yeah, that was. If you have not seen that, go back on the live from Saturday night. Yeah, it was Saturday night at St. Louis, and watch this jet car literally melt two cars that are stacked on top of each other.
It was something. They had a monster truck go down the track at 131 this weekend for NMCA.
I was sitting in the tower when this guy was melting cars, and I was just so enamored by it.
I mean, it was 10 minutes of people dead silent. We were dumbfounded.
Oh yeah, like, is this really happening?
Outside the box.
For me, and you're going to remember this, because you've been there, and I only get to see it once a year. Yellow Bullet, when they call 850 to the lanes, and it's like this giant car show parade of 850 cars coming down that road in front of the grandstands and tower leading into the staging lanes. There is just something about this group of 50, 60, 850 cars that look like they could go on a cruise, that are driving in front of the grandstands in front of all these people. I only get to see it once a year. It's at Yellow Bullet Nationals at Cecil County. My heart just gets so happy seeing that. I don't know what it is. Just something about the variety of cars. None of them are like Pro Mod and Top Sportsman. These legitimately look like cars that you could go take on a cruise night on a Friday or Saturday night, cruising the strip. I don't know if people still do that anymore, but that just is something to me that will never get old. Like, every year, that is one of the things that I so look forward to leading up to that event, is I get to see all these 850 cars getting called to the lanes and driving to the lanes and going, it doesn't matter if it's a
love to watch that
69 Camaro or a 2015 Mustang. And it kind of reminds me of, and I know that you really haven't got to do any of this, but it kind of reminds me of Drag and Drive. And I would love to have Michael Narks on the show, because he is a Drag and Drive guy. And I've done Sick Week. What was, I did another one. But Sick Week obviously is the creme de la creme, if you will. And that is awesome. I mean, I remember we talk about, back in the day type of stuff. I remember even in the late 90s and early 2000s, like, if you had a 12-second or 11-second streetcar, that was pretty damn quick. We are now talking about 6-second streetcars. These guys can go hundreds of miles and rip off 6-second passes at the drag strip.
Yep.
And I'm sitting here thinking, I never would have thought that would happen, but it's so cool. And that's going to lead into something that we are going to talk about on another podcast, and that is entertainment value at the drag strip, and what we in the industry need to do to increase fan support, and what kind of, we need to bring more of the entertainment value back into drag racing without taking away from the drag racing. So that's going to be something that we discuss on another podcast. But
Mhm.
on that, I think we're going to wrap it up for the day. Again, I want to obviously thank Ellen for spending her time with me today, and I really enjoy this, and I think based on the feedback that we got from last week, other people do as well. So if you like what we're doing, again, YouTube, Facebook, all the streaming services as far as the audio goes, the audio gets put up. You can even download the audio directly on our website, e3extreme.com. And a huge shout out right here. Well, since we're doing split screen, it's all kinds of backwards. Classic Graphix and Menscer Motorsports obviously are the branding partners that are on with us full time, and we could not be more appreciative of them. If you need any shirts, crew shirts, whatever it may be, make sure to hit up Scott over at Classic Graphix. And again, if you're looking for the best shocks and struts in the world, I don't care if you've got a mini truck, if you've got a street rod, if you've got a 3-second pro mod or a 12-second, street car that you're driving around in. Mark, John, the crew over at Menscer Motorsports is going to have something or can build something for your car, and you are not going to find better customer service in the shock and strut industry than you will with Mark and the crew over there. So big shout out to Mark and of course his wife Allie, who we've been friends with for years and absolutely love both of them. They are two of the best human beings that you will ever meet. If you're on YouTube, like and subscribe, hit the notification bell so anytime that we do any of this stuff, you get notified. Ellen, I am headed to Denver tomorrow. God willing, I don't think Southwest has nearly the flight issues that everybody does, but I do believe that my mother is flying Delta tomorrow. So please pray for her. I really hope that she can make it to Denver because I don't want to. Listen, I'm getting a hold of Josh, the Midwest tech guy, while I'm in Denver. If Mom can't make it, I'm going to just go hang out with Josh all weekend. I will. I'll figure out something.
I'm going to Colorado on vacation the week after.
Yeah, it's funny. Our schedules never overlap when we're not at a race. So, but it's all good. But again, I appreciate you being on. I know everybody loves it. Please tell Casper that I appreciate his participation today.
He is worn out from his participation.
Yeah, I'm sure that we will see him again.
And comment what you want us to talk about too. Let us know what you want to know about.
Absolutely. If there are subjects that you want us to talk about, and listen, Ellen and I can bring on another guest. If there's a guest that you would like to see Ellen and I both interact with, we can have added guests. That's not a problem. We can do that. So yeah, leave comments, like and share, do your thing, social media. We appreciate you. Until next time, though, that's about all we got for you. Again, thank you, Ellen, and we will see you guys next time.
Bye.